Shut up! The Footy's on Triple M!
Now on Triple M Footy.
Too strong, too good.
This is the Midweek Rub.
That is just brilliant.
How do you like those apples?
Triple M rocks footy.
Yes, this is Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub, and it's a big edition too, of course, exclusive on the Listener app also. We've got all the big guns, the regulars here. Wayne Carey, welcome. You must be pleased. Lockdown's going to end tomorrow.
We could go 25Ks now. The restaurants and cafes, I'm glad they're all opening up again and everyone can at least go out for dinner and lunch and we can get out. We're just, well, not all out, but just a little bit out.
Welcome, Damien Barrett. You've had a big day. The rest of us are still in lockdown in our trackies on the couch, but you've been out and about today. Plenty of news.
Yeah, we have, Joey, and we'll get to that in a few moments. But Nathan Buckley, obviously now no longer, as of Monday coming, coach of the Collingwood Footy Club.
And welcome, Daisy. Just walked in with a bit of a strut because there is big news going around that you have opened at $41 with a couple of betting agencies to be the next coach of Collingwood.
Yes, my favourite part about that was Alistair Clarkson opened at $34. So all things sort of equal, I'm right in this one.
Given that you're the youngest person in this little quartet, and Damo obviously been out and about at press conferences and everything else, that parachute tracksuit, that went out with ABBA. You wouldn't
Nice, isn't it? A little Adidas number, a
You
little
would not
retro
wear
fit.
that painting the house, seriously.
I'm certainly not painting the house. You don't like
I
it.
actually had one of those, seriously, in the real early 90s.
Yeah, they're cool.
It was a Nike one, though.
Yes, well, this one is Adidas.
Hey, we're going to get into your legend of...
We're on radio, Duck.
But I just can't believe he's wearing it.
He's always commenting on all our kids,
Yeah,
isn't
I
he?
know.
The bloody
Wearing his
fashion,
size 6
fashion police.
country road top.
Yeah. Hey, before we get into the big news of the day, of course, Nathan Buckley resigning or stepping down or getting tapped. We'll get into that in a moment. But let's just take a listen to a snippet of the press conference.
You know, I something I'm equally passionate about going forward. Robbo.
Sorry, cutting you off. Congratulations.
I mentioned very much
Mark, in respect to the senior coach, Surge, thank you for always.
Just ask one last question, and it's probably
Jay, you're up, Jay.
Rob Harvey will be interim for the rest of the season. Is that confirmed?
Yeah, he will.
No.
Rob.
You can't write that
Robbo,
stuff.
he stole the show, Daisy.
Oh, my goodness. You know what that reminds me of? You know when we were all in the first lockdown, you have the Zoom family catch-ups and you've got your mum who's had a couple of wines and you're doing something and you don't know when to speak and you get into it. Hang on. Nathan, can you just... Absolutely. Arguably the biggest press conference of the year so far, COVID included. Yeah. The footballing world, and especially here in Melbourne, we are a footballing public.
Come on, Robbo.
Robbo is absolutely gassed.
How's he muffed that up?
I don't know. He said the weather was affecting the internet.
Everyone was on it. How's Robbo muffed that? Was he sitting in his car or something?
Don't know.
Duck, you know what I...
You can't say anything.
I don't want to talk about him.
Your internet was fine though, so well done to you.
That is the biggest. That is massive that is massive for any journo out there. You've got Nathan Buckley, one of the biggest names ever to play, the biggest press conference in terms of sport for the year for the AFL, and he muffed it.
Yeah. Just cutting people off left, right, and centre.
It's the head of the organisation.
And I know, look, Robbo and I get along just fine, but he now should not pot anyone for making a mistake this year for the whole year because he's muffed it. That's the equivalent of being 1 metre out directly in front and kicking it out on the full.
Well, a really good opportunity for an internet provider to just jump on board and maybe sponsor Robbo exclusively because whoever's doing the job isn't doing a very good one.
Hey, we're going to take a listen. Yeah, we're only mucking around there. It was obviously unfortunate for Robbo. He couldn't get it working. But, hey, we're going to get into the serious footy news in the next break. But before we do that, now you've started a bit of a thing, the Daisy's Legend of the Round.
Yes, the hero of the round this week.
My favourite opener, that is.
Is it?
Mine too.
Thank you. I put that one together myself, so I appreciate the feedback. Jack Higgins gets my hero of the week this round, just purely for the fact he kicked 1 goal 6. He copped a bit of crap on the back of it. Missy Higgins was the headline, which I, for what it's worth, thought was bloody hilarious and clever. Some of the St Kilda people didn't find it that funny. Not the point. He tried his bloody guts out in that game. You and I were calling it, Duck. He was the reason that footy club was in that game for so long. Yes, it was unfortunate he kicked 1 goal 6, 2 of those being crucial shots late in that game. But he wasn't the only one without fault in that one just before half-time. Seb Ross waltzed into almost an unguarded goal and missed one. So to Jack Higgins for putting in the performance he did, bit of perspective, he also had brain surgery in 2019. So for him to be out there going about his footy the way he is, plays it in a cheeky, fun manner, plays footy how it should be played in that role. Jack Higgins, don't worry about the missus, son. You are my hero of the round.
Nice one, Joe.
Very
like
good,
it.
Daisy.
Like
yeah,
it.
that's
He would have been BOG if he
yeah,
kicked straight.
absolutely.
Yep.
He kept the Saints in it there for a long time. Damo, it's time for the news, and of course, the big news of the day was all about Nathan Buckley.
It was, Joey, and after the win against the Adelaide Crows on the weekend, conversations were had with Nathan Buckley, Graham Wright being one of those people, Duck, and others around the decision-making about the future coach of the Collingwood Footy Club. And it was relayed to Nathan Buckley at some stage of Tuesday that the club had made the call that this time was it. Now, he, I think, had the option, I believe anyway, of coaching out the year, but he's chosen to just use next Monday's game as the farewell game in that perspective. And it just basically brings together his thoughts with the club's thoughts. So I'm using the phrase, Joey, for what it's worth, as being contextually pushed out. I say contextually because he didn't want to go as a starting point, but at the same time, he had his mind opened up to the possibility that the club was going to be in a position where it just didn't require him to be the next person. And that's where it's got to. They're mature conversations. It's a mutual outcome as a result, but ultimately not one that he wanted to be addressing in this current time frame.
Yeah, it started like it was a mutual decision, wasn't it? When he started his press conference, but it pretty quickly became, as you just said, and the way I thought of it when I was watching it, Daisy, and I know you'll agree with me here, it's like a player that retires. We don't ever really choose to retire. We're sort of led to say, look, we think we've got to move past you. We've got to play the kids. If we had the choice ourselves, we would all play one extra year. We're competitive beasts. We think we could do it. It felt a bit like the same with Nathan Buckley. He understood that it was the right decision. It was time to move on. But if it was, say, left in his hands to make the sole choice, it sounded like he probably wanted to go on, but he understood the situation.
Always sad for me, and it doesn't matter whether it's in the football industry or any industry. We've seen so many people this year because of obviously the circumstances around the world not actually have a job and not be working at all. So for me, I feel terribly sad for him because I know how much he loves that footy club and loves what he's
and gave
doing.
It everything.
So absolutely, so sad, but he's going to have plenty of options.
Yeah.
I mean, Nathan Buckley has got the world at his feet. And I'm sure one day if he wanted to coach again, we'll probably have the opportunity to do that as well. So sad, but then also look at think about the pressure that's now going to be
lifted,
alleviated off his shoulders.
Yeah.
I mean, he can now be a great dad as he was before, but even more great.
Do you think it's the right call?
Yeah, I think so. I think so now. And if they were having doubts, and Bucks clearly was probably second guessing himself a little bit as well to some degree. So for them to be mutual, and I think it was. I agree with everything you said before, but for Bucks has always said all the way along that if it's better for the Collingwood Footy Club, he would be more than happy to leave. And once again, he's done that. So I wish him well.
And when your time, excuse me, and when your time is up, whether you're retiring or you do sort of get the tap, if you can walk away knowing you've given it 100% your all, and we can genuinely attest to Nathan Buckley as a player at that footy club, did everything he could to be the best player for that football club, the best player for his team. As a coach, he was no different, no stone unturned. If you follow his journey, yes, it might have been a little bit his way or the highway at the start, but no doubt through 2017, 16, 18, when they started to turn it around, he sort of evolved a bit as a person as well, became more personable. The group sort of responded to that, a kick away from being a premiership coach, which is unfortunate he wasn't. But to Nathan, well done, I guess, on everything you've achieved at that football club, and will go down as one of the greats, if not the greatest player coach they've had.
Damo, what did you think watching the presser today? Because this year it's been a bit with Bucks interesting that sometimes you think, he should keep coaching. He's a very good football coach. And then other times we look and go, maybe they need a fresh start.
Yep.
What did you feel watching it today?
The latter. And again, to your point, I loved your retirement analogy there, Joey, because that is what I think it's got to. And I think you can then only analyse the full situation once it's been the decision has been made, which it now has. So, and he made the reference, they needed someone with a bit of pizzazz, and that wasn't quite the word, but it was a word along those lines, and they wanted it for 5 years, and he almost conceded that he wasn't that person at this stage of his coaching career at that particular footy club. What happens next is intriguing because I've spoken to Jeff Brown today, who's going to challenge and is challenging. he's committed more than ever to still do what he wants to do. I raise that in the context of there's going to be a subcommittee formed to find the new coach. They'll be making calls potentially as early as this week about who will be the next coach. And I would imagine if you're a senior coach, let's use Alistair Clarkson for the purpose of this conversation, you'd register your interest or otherwise. If it's yes, I'm interested, you'd then say, well, what happens next though? Who am I reporting to? Is it Mark Corder? Is it Jeff Brown? Is it a combination of a few things? So until they sort that situation out, if you're an Alistair Clarkson and someone of that calibre, you couldn't possibly enter meaningfully into conversations about breaking your own contract, going to that club without knowing who's going to be calling the shots.
That's a very good point because everyone thinks Collingwood are getting a head start by at least cutting ties now. They can go on the search for a new coach, but who's going to be doing the searching? You're right. That's a really fascinating subplot to this story.
Listening to Ross Lyon on Sunday Footy here, working alongside you, Duck, he said, and it was interesting from his point of view, he said if he was approached, he would go in and lay down his terms.
Yes,
so not almost the club hunting him. Say, yes, come in, what have you got? Like, this is what we want. No. If you want me to be your coach for the next 5 years, this is the direction we're going in. This is what I'm bringing. This is where we're going. Either you agree with me on that or don't sign me.
There's only some coaches that could do that.
But if you're talking to a Clarkson or
right.
a Ross Lyon, they're the ones you get, and you're probably going to know exactly what you're signing up for at the start. Whereas you go on an untried method, that's when you hold more of a power as a footy club.
You're subservient to the footy club if you go in like that. And also, let's not forget that Robert Harvey's obviously taking over as the senior coach. And who knows, Robert Harvey could do a Paul Roos.
Well, that's what I want to ask you. So what should Robert Harvey do now with 11 games? Because you experienced it under David Teague. So David Teague, once he took over from Bretton Bolton, he started coaching to win games. He started putting blokes back in their traditional spots. He started playing Curnow and Murphy in the midfield. He picked guys on merit, not on a young player getting a game. And they started winning. Yeah. And that gave David Teague the opportunity to be senior coach. So does Robert Harvey coach to try and win games of footy to give himself the best chance of being a senior coach? Or does he coach the club to say, I'm going to play the young kids and let's get an 11-game head start on season 2022 and play McRae, play Rantel, get Ollie Henry back in the side and build for next year? How would he go about it?
Well, I guess it gets back to whether the Ross Lyon, what he said, and that is whether Robert says, well, I want to coach my way. I want to put my spin on it. This is my chance to show you what I can do, and or whether he's just been told what to do.
I reckon there's no doubt if you became an interim coach, personally, what I would do, you'd be going out there putting everything you could to win games of footy. This is your one shot, if you will, to show your worth as a senior coach. So you'll be playing.
So if he wanted to play Mason Cox because he thinks that's the best chance to win, he plays Cox.
Pendles and Sidey.
That doesn't line up, though, with where the club is at the moment, doesn't it? They've played 7 first gamers this year. They've chosen not to play Mason Cox.
But again, this is why it's a predicament again, because you've got a bloke who's going to come in with somewhat of his own interests of being the senior coach with clear aspirations, applied for a few jobs, wants to be a senior coach. Unless the club is saying to him, well, you play the kids and, well, we'll see. It's going to be...
Well, that'll give us something to talk about over the next couple of weeks.
I don't see Robert Harvey being in the mix in the big picture. Now, that's just my opinion on the take I've got of this situation. I could be wrong on that, but that's my read on it going into it.
One other quick one, Damo. Has this meant at Waverley today, there's maybe some conversations and meetings going on at high level saying, hang on a minute, Clarko and Sam Mitchell, everyone's talking about them. Do they need to get together and start thinking about what their plan is? Because you would expect someone from Collingwood to be making phone calls to either Clarko or Sam Mitchell to see if they're interested in the coaching job.
You would, and it'll be Graham Wright, I would think, who will be forming at least a significant part of the subcommittee that does get formed. But if you're either of those gentlemen, particularly Alistair Clarkson, I just can't see how you engage, Duck, in meaningful conversation without knowing who's going to actually be heading the football club.
I still think it's fascinating that we keep talking about Sam Mitchell as a senior coach. How many games has he coached now? 8, 9 at VFL level?
No, they stopped after round 6.
Oh, okay, they did too. So only 6 games. I mean, there are way more qualified assistant coaches out there than Sam Mitchell. That's not to say Sam won't be a great coach or could be a great coach straight away, but it is very premature. And we keep talking about it. The pressure that Sam Mitchell's under already is quite immense. And to take over from Alistair Clarkson or go to a Collingwood behind Nathan Buckley. I mean, what sort of pressure does that bring?
Yep.
I mean, I just think it's ludicrous.
Just one other one. Carlton now. They've started a review. We'll get into Carlton after the break. But does this now put a bit of pressure on them to fast-track their review where they want to go with their coaching staff if Collingwood are already starting the search to get the best candidate out there? If Carlton wait till the end of the year and then decide to make a decision on Teague, all of a sudden they're going to left probably getting the second best coach.
Joey, history tells me 100% that once there are two coaches potentially gettable, two clubs after a new coach, the competitive tension goes through the roof no matter what each club says publicly. So to answer your question, game on.
Game on.
Yeah.
Interesting. This is Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub, exclusive on the Listener app. And if it wasn't for Nathan Buckley stepping down today, the biggest story of the week, no doubt, was Carlton, Damo, and the external review that we now know is going to take place effective immediately.
Yeah, and again, there's so many ways to read it. I feel at the outset it's a mechanism, guys, to actually bolster David Teague in the role. Now, I say that, but then you introduce the external people who are going to review and obviously need to keep open what they may find. So that's my take on it, and that's why I think John Barker's already decided to leave after 10 years.
Do you think
at the
he's
Footy
jumped
Club.
off a sinking ship?
I think he's jumped off a ship that was not going to have him on it regardless next year, no matter who's there. And that's what happens with assistant coaches, Duck, isn't it? He's been a caretaker coach of that particular club in question. He wanted to get the job that ultimately David T got, and even before that, Brendan Bolton. Yeah. So I can understand why he's done it. And again, a bit similar to Nathan Buckley, once he's been told you're not going to be here next year, you may as well make the call now, not string it out.
How is a club like Carlton in the review mode again when they've only just re-signed a senior coach?
Extraordinary question. And we discussed a few moments ago the decisions that they made back in 2019, as North Melbourne did with Reece Shaw, same time frame in 2019. Clubs can get caught up in what happens in caretaker mode. It's not a real mode. I mean, you touched on it a moment ago.
Which is why you think Robert Harvey.
Yeah.
Well, Daisy, you were a part of it. You were there when the Brendan Bolton. He got the sack. David Teague took over, and it was a honeymoon period. You won however many games the back end of the year.
Because anyone who had their sort of papers stamped under Brendan Bolton, who you're not going to get a game, Teague came in and said, everyone's equal. I'll pick you on form. We're going to play to win. This is and not that Brendan wasn't playing people to win, but he was doing it his way with his system. So there's no doubt about that. To the point of why they're doing it now, I think it's better to do it now because the results haven't gone the way they would have liked this season. So you can either sit on your hands and do nothing or be proactive and go, hang on, there must be a reason.
It just means the last review was rubbish.
It just means they're putting their hand up and saying they didn't get it right. Yeah. So rubbish, get it right, whatever you want to call it. So to have Johnny Barker go, who is a ripping bloke, two, a great footy mind. When he was the interim coach after Mick Moldhouse, some of the players thought that he was a red-hot show to get it. Instead of Brendan Bolton, they went down a different path, but he is certainly someone who's given great service to the footy club and no doubt will enjoy life away from what has been a long journey at a team that has struggled during his time.
Do you still think David Teague is the right man to coach Carlton?
No doubt. I just think it's too premature to start jumping off his ship. If you wanted, as you said...
No doubt?
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that he's had half a year in COVID times, and now this is his first real season. Give him a genuine, clear run at it. Get all your players fit and healthy. And I know at times that isn't an excuse, but as I've said a few times, they're 2 or 3 goals off, 22 points. I think you say is their average losing margin. Yep. Charlie Curnow back in that side alongside Harry McKay. There's 2 or 3 goals better aside already. They can shore up their defence. That's leaking like a sieve. That's an easy fix for mine. And then get some people in and around him to support him more. Maybe go down a different path like they're saying with potentially assistants coming, going, whichever way it looks like. Because that's what we're reading, is it not? If they're going to bolster Teague, they're going to move and shuffle assistants. So I would back Teague in and say, right, we're right behind you in this. Obviously, if results don't come in the next season or two, well, then there's discussions to be had.
But Joey, just to back over that question you asked a moment ago, it will create the tension upon Collingwood doing what it did. Now, they might go into this review thinking it's all about supporting Teague. They'll be wondering. They'll be second-guessing.
So you're saying today's results has changed their thoughts from yesterday?
Absolutely it does. If they know that someone else is going to make the phone call to someone they might want, they've got to make that same phone call.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Hey, who should take more responsibility for Carlton's situation this year, the players or the senior coach?
Oh, look at the end of the day, it's a very good question. I don't think it's just the senior coach. I mean, we and the senior coach gets the pressure put on them, and we've seen that tremendously with the guy that got stood down today in Nathan Buckley, or retired today. And unfortunately for senior coaches, you know the caper when you go into it. And I love when Ross Lyon talks about this as well. We keep going back to Ross, but he's new on board and he gives a lot of an insight into a senior coach because he's only just out of it. But like he said, you understand. And that's why when the whips are cracking and there's big decisions to be made, their heads on the chopping block. They're the ones that invariably have to. So that's why sometimes when they say, did you listen to your assistants as much as you should? And did you do that? That's why you need experience. That's why, and feel comfortable in your position, because then you can start to listen to others.
I think for the first time in footy, we've seen that not only do coaches and players come under scrutiny, but list managers now. Obviously, the way the Pies happened, Ned Guy, a lot of that fell on Bucks' shoulders, and then everyone said, well, hang on a minute. This isn't exactly his fault. It's the form, a byproduct of that. You look at the Blues now. Is their form coach or player related, or the fact that they're leaking goals? You get a Sard or Williams, Zach Williams in, and they're not really doing that well.
Well, what will come back with Sard and Williams and those guys that they've got there recently on big money for halfback flankers is whether they can keep a Harry McKay. Because if I'm North Melbourne, I'm a knocking, given that his brother's just re-signed at North and they've been going for some big fish. So, you just don't know. They've obviously, Cripps has re-signed and they've got Walsh, I believe, is coming out.
Yep. And Cripps hasn't officially re-signed either, by the way. It's heading that way.
The three biggest names at that footy club haven't re-signed.
Yep.
That's your future there. Cripps, Walsh and McKay.
I tell you what.
And Wiedering's the other one. That I'm not sure he has re-signed.
Is there any chance that any of the other 16 footy clubs in this competition could come out and do something? Like just newsworthy?
Well, so the Saints have been in there. I know you're getting a lot of questions.
Like every week we come in here and as a bloke who was going to be firmly positioned on the players and trying to make a stance, I've just had what do you think of this?
North Melbourne would love us talking about that.
Yeah, that's right. And the Saints have had plenty of dramas as well. So hey, just a couple more questions for you, Duck. We won't have time for the duck dive, but a few more. If Max King rang you up and asked for a coffee and said, can I sit down with the greatest centre-half forward, greatest player of all time, what advice would you give Max King at the moment?
I think it's all above his shoulders at the moment, but I would be more than happy to actually sit down with him if he called. I've actually done that with numerous people and numerous players over the years, and it's quite enjoyable when you sit down, especially with a big key forward. He's got the ability. Right now, his body language to me looks like he is really
So what would you say to him? How would you get him out of that body language?
Well, because you don't understand, I'm led to believe, and you would know more than me, but he is struggling with a back injury.
Yep.
Unfortunately, in this game, if once you cross, as they say, once you cross the white line, you declare yourself fit. But we know he's not. So I think if he's not, and I know that there's no VFL at the moment, you've got to rest him and get the kid right because he's just losing confidence now. So for me, it's all around his confidence, and that's the biggest thing for me. That's what the conversation would be around, not around actually what he's doing on the football field.
Are you amazed to some extent when you sit down with these players, you said you've sat down with a few of them, how little they sort of understand of what you would just take for granted that they knew? In terms of, I've spoken to other midfielders and younger kids at footy clubs, and you think because you're in a professional environment, this is what you do or this is what you know in your position, you say stuff and they just sort of blank face you.
I sat down with Jesse Hogan.
Did you know who you were?
So Paul Roos and Goody sat down with him and a good hour and had a green tea and he got up and they walked away. I walked in my direction. They walked off in their direction and Jesse said to Goody and Roosy, he actually knows a little bit about footy. And they said, he played centre-half forward. He jumped on his skateboard and rode home.
Was that just a little dent to your ego?
Yeah, it did.
Give you a little?
I was shattered.
This has been a big show. Triple M Footy's midweek. Rub, Damo, Daisy, Joey and Duck. And we take a look back at last week. We always like to give our certainty of the round. 2 boys got it right and 2 of us got it wrong. Damo, what game would you like to have as your certainty this week?
I'm going to do what Daisy did last week and go for the Bombers over the Tigers over there in the Dreamtime on Saturday night.
You're on the Bombers bandwagon.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. I am. I'm a big convert.
I'm going to take Carlton to beat the West Coast Eagles as my certainty. I just think the Blues, we know have got the capability to score. They will have a game where they will blow a team out of the water and we'll all sit there and go, this is what we've been thinking they can deliver all year. Can't believe I said that. I can't believe now listening back. I put my faith in Carlton.
You know what's weird? I actually picked West by 22 points. That has been their average, and that's exactly what they lost by a game.
It's like you could almost script how Carlton were going to lose. They were going to be competitive, they were going to be around the mark, and they were going to get beaten by 22
in winnable
points.
positions. They just allow the opposition dominant periods, and then they dominate for periods, and then let the opposition.
I love the
do
courage
same.
by Damo, though. That was very good. You'd been going for the
dumb
safe
courage.
once roll.
Stupid
Duck, what
courage.
about you? You took the D's to beat Brisbane as your
Yeah.
certainty. How good
I
was
was
that?
in-
You
I was-
knew the D's loved Giant Stadium.
Yeah, I was in a little bit of trouble at half time, I must admit, but it was all, wasn't it? It was all Brisbane's way until then, and then they just flipped it, and that shows you a good team.
Yep.
If you weren't a believer about the D's, you have to be now. They are serious. They are serious premiership contenders.
Yeah, if you weren't on till the weekend, you're now the last one on the train because everyone is officially on the D's train. And you took the Pies, Daisy, to go over in Adelaide. You said they'd fly up on the day. They're a good travelling team. They'd get it done.
I said they'd jump them and they'd hang on, and they jumped them and they hung on.
They did. Well done. Hey, let's take a look to this weekend's games. We're going to start with a big one tomorrow night. Thursday night footy's back, which is great. The Power and the Cats. How do you see this one playing out, Daisy?
I like the Power. I think they need to get a scalp. They've only beaten the Tigs so far this season, losses to Melbourne and the Bulldogs, I think.
And
so
West Coast.
And West Coast, who are 7th, 8th on the ladder. So for them, this is going to be a very big game. Over there, the Cats are an interrupted lead-in with what the Adelaide government are making them do in terms of Southern quarantine, all that sort of jazz. I'm going to tip the Power, and if allowed, I'll have them as my certainty.
The Power is your certainty again.
You took that from me. I thought.
Really?
Yeah, I just think the Power. The other reason why, I think because of the restrictions that we've had here, and Geelong basically been in isolation, and I know they're allowed to come out and train, but having
Is it that big a deal now?
fly in, fly out.
Joel Selwood saying no massage. If we had no massage at Carlton, I would have played 50 games. Honestly, I spent 4 hours a day there.
I think the accumulative effect. I think maybe 1 week you get away with it, but once you start getting into the second, third, if you've got to come back here, isolate, not be able to do what you normally would do, it does build. It does build some tension. So that's the reason why I think the Power. I agree.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to take Geelong as my certainty. We haven't had this yet. Head to head, Geelong. So Port Adelaide, in short, for them to win games of football, they have to win the contested ball and clearance battle. They are a team that have to win it and play in the front half. Geelong's last 7 weeks, they are plus 27 per game contested possession. They are smashing everyone, and they've probably got the biggest contested beast coming back into the side, we believe.
As we speak today on this Wednesday, the teams are yet to be announced.
Can I have an
he's
asterisk?
expected
Only,
to be.
It's only if Dangerfield plays.
Duncan's back.
It's an unconditional certainty for you.
All right, I'm in. Cats.
Yeah. What about the Swans Hawks? I'm actually going to take the Swans as my certainty.
Against the Hawks?
I hope Buddy plays because he was a little bit sore. But did anyone see the comparison between what he's done? It's almost
identical.
Other than the premiership.
Yeah.
It's almost identical. Been an unbelievable player. I just like what the Swans are doing. They're just taking the game on. They score. The Hawks will try to drag them back. But I just love the Swans at the minute.
And you guarantee you confident if they'll make the 8? They're almost a lock.
Well, I think these are the games, aren't they?
They have to
they have to beat the Hawks, who are sitting 7-8. They beat the Hawks, then I think they're well on their way to playing finals footy, and I thought they were the vulnerable ones.
Can I just have a side note on the back of that? I give the Hawks a red-hot show in this one.
Do you really?
Fresh off the bye, I reckon the Swans, the question has been their young players been up for a while now. I just think...
Are you tipping the Hawks?
I'll tip the Hawks to be in front at quarter time.
Damo, what game do you want to look at?
Let's go with the Saints and the Crows. And I just can't see the Saints having enough manpower to be even competitive in this one. So I think it's an obvious one to me that the Crows just win that because of the unavailability, as we speak, of 2 key forwards in Membry, and unavailability potentially on King, and Ross also not being available, depending on where on how that looks. But they haven't got enough manpower to.
That's the issue with trying to rest Max King. I believe they've only got like 26 fit available men to choose from. They're even taking their mid-season recruit up to Cairns just in case.
But you can actually shatter a guy for a long period of time, not just a short period of time.
Yeah.
If he continues to go the way he's going, the confidence is just going down and down and down. You've got to be.
Are you talking permanently, even, Duck?
Well, maybe. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think it has definitely happened before.
To a lesser extent, Paddy Dow at the Blues played a lot of football, got the old you'll be playing every game in the back half, and it was almost he wanted to be dropped so he could go and work on, get himself into some form. Just being out there week in, week out does someone, as you say, no favours in the long term.
And the last game we'll touch on the West Coast Eagles and the Tigers. We really enjoyed the footy over in Perth. The Dreamtime game was a huge success. Can you see the Eagles getting a little bit of personnel back upsetting the Tigers, or do you think the Tigers there got their mojo back?
I'm going to go with the Eagles. I just think a little bit of mojo. A lot of players out. Are we expecting, given that it is Wednesday,
Kennedy and Allen will play?
Well, I'm happy to go with the Eagles.
Damo?
I can't, and I just know that Richmond's been on the road now for, is it 3 or so weeks now? They requested this game be brought forward a week so they can stay on the road and then come back and have a rest. Oh, look, they've set themselves for that patch of games. To me, the Eagles are a team they'll beat in that last particular game in that patch.
Yeah, I like the Tigers too. They were really good last week. Just getting back to the way we know and love Richmond to play.
Yeah, I think the Tigers will win that one as well. Of course, on Monday, Queen's birthday, the D's and the Magpies, it will be Nathan Buckley's last game in charge. So we wish him well and hope the boys put in a good showing for him.
What is the record? They always get a response, don't they, when a coach is on the way out?
Well, it's always a response for the first coach the week after. So I don't know how it'll be knowing a coach in his last game. Like, I don't know how often that would happen.
It happened with Brad Scott, although it wasn't announced formally before the last game, but the players knew, and everyone in the world knew by the time the game started, and they won that game. So against the Bulldogs, I think it was.
Yeah, it will be fascinating to see. That's at the SCG, of course, the big freeze.
Melbourne will be far too strong.
Yeah, they should win that one. And of course, don't forget, you can listen to every game across round 13 on Triple M, starting with tomorrow night's huge clash between Port Adelaide and Geelong, live from 7 p.m. at the Adelaide Oval. This has been Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub, a huge edition. Thanks for joining. We'll see you all again next week.